until somebody tells me that they can hear me. Let me know when you want me to. Anybody? Oh, you hear me. All right, great.
We can hear you now.
Great. Thank you. Well, we have a quorum in the room. We have voted to allow Mayor Noak, Mayor Grasso, and Nina Idamudia virtually to participate. And I was giving some recap of my trip to DC. So March 15th, I think, is the deadline for either passing a spending bill, continuing resolutions, or potential government shutdowns. It seemed like from the associations, nobody was willing to say that they thought a continuing resolution was the outcome. It's the outcome we hope for, I think, but may not be the most likely outcome here. One of the other interesting panels that we had was that we had the majority and the minority staff from the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and the Senate Banking Committee. So Transportation and Infrastructure oversees the highway bill. Senate Banking really oversees the transit funding. They are starting to talk about what that next transportation bill looks like. So while the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act or the bipartisan infrastructure law doesn't expire until October of 2026, staff are looking for input now on what could be in the next transportation bill. They were specifically interested in ideas for improving planning, procurement, permitting, and performance measures. They want to know what's working locally or what could be improved upon. Again, thinking about sort of how we or how national associations and MPOs can come to the table with some opportunities to say these are the things that we think could be improved, will be something that's really helpful. And it's something that I'll have my staff start to think about here. Because we do have strong relationships with our congressional delegation and strong relationships with folks who work on House T&I as well, and Senate Banking. And so we want to be proactive in us giving them some input on those things. Again, they were pretty clear that they have had no floor or ceiling given to them in terms of funding. I think one of the unique aspects of the transportation bill that is in place, it is largely partially dependent on the Highway Trust Fund, but also does have some general funds in it and advanced appropriations from future years. So that's how they were able to increase the size of that bill. And so thinking about whether or not advanced appropriations are going to continue to be an opportunity to move forward, or that's sort of where this gray area comes into play of what can be spent now versus what can be spent later. So they were insightful. They really are looking for input again from the staff level. It is very less political. They really want to get stuff done. So that was encouraging. And then I think just from the mood in the room and from my peers, our peers from across the country, is that we want to continue to keep local programs and programs that help facilitate local funding moving forward. And so we are keenly awaiting guidance on how some of the new policy ideas that have been listed, but not necessarily operationalized, will continue to impact our work. So there have been a couple memos from USDOT come out that have focused on the economy, on American families, on looking at things like marriage rate, birth rate, things that we don't have any idea of how they're thinking about implementing those things. But I think at the end of the day, if we're talking about our economy, that is going to continue to be pretty important for us. And I know that I have smart staff that have worked with lots of data sets. And I think as we look at our projects and programs here in the region, they are about economic growth and opportunity. And so again, we'll continue to keep you all abreast of what we're hearing from Washington. But those are some of the highlights that I wanted to share with you just from the past couple days. I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions.
Any comments, questions? The interesting thing about the latest on population is that I'm thinking, urban versus rural, and really the impact of that if they're breaking it down state by state or area by area, because that could go in the wrong direction if you're looking at it. We all know demographically and statistically that the rural areas are suffering and they're losing population coming to the urban areas. So you have interstate stuff going on, and obviously state to state things, but that will be real interesting if they press that criteria for population or demographics. Interesting. Right, move
Okay.
on.
Okay. Just a couple other things that I'll share with you that are I heard in DC is that we do appreciate IDOT's commitment to continue to fund our reimbursements. The majority of our program is a grant that comes through IDOT, then they get reimbursed from the federal government. So we have been able to continue to resume work with just a couple limited exceptions here. There are some uncertainties that remain around the discretionary grants from the IIJA. Our Safe Streets for All grant, again, we have a nearly $5 million grant. It is a discretionary grant to complete regional safety frameworks and develop action plans in 6 counties. For this grant, we are a direct federal recipient. We are continuing to figure out the reimbursement process right now. And once we are assured that that is moving forward, our hope is that we can continue to move that forward. But again, this was written with a specific frame for a grant program that was to help improve safety in communities that had been disinvested. So there was a lot of community engagement work related to the Justice 40 initiative, which now no longer is in place. And so again, without that clarity of what we should be doing, we are being a little bit cautious about how we move that forward. The other grant that's been impacted is the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant that was issued to the Mayor's Caucus with us as a key technical partner here, again, funded through the IRA, and is paused under the executive order, although there was a temporary restraining order for states that sued. And so again, with that lack of clarity, it's hard for us to continue to put time and effort in because of the way that we are funded on a reimbursement basis. And so it just, like, for our cash flow purposes, is in our best interest, I think, to take a pretty cautious approach on those 2 areas here. So we're hopeful, again, the DOT memos do state that within 90 days, there should be guidance and updates. I've been in communication with the Federal Highway Administration office here. We'll be sitting down with them later this month to see if we can get a little bit more clarity. Moving on to some other topics here, we are beginning to involve the public in the planning process for the regional transportation plan. We are well underway in the RTP, regional transportation process. We've created a questionnaire that's going to go out to gather public input, but also to gather input from implementers here to make sure that this plan is informed by the experiences of those who use our transportation system. It's about 20-ish questions. It takes about 10 minutes to complete. It's available both in English and in Spanish at cmap.is/RTP for those of you who are online, but we will get this out to you all. If you have newsletters or other community organizations that might be interested in giving us some feedback on how they move around the region and what's important to us, we would appreciate that feedback. We'll be continuing to collect responses for this throughout 2025. So there's sort of not a near-term hard and fast deadline here. But again, please stay tuned to our social media. We will ask that you try and amplify that survey for us. And then we are working on our annual call for projects with RTA for our technical assistance program. Again, by working together, we have one simple application process for technical assistance across the region. Communities are welcome to start applying starting Monday, March 10th. The application period will be open for 4 weeks and close on April 4th, and we'll expect to announce awards of projects that'll be selected early this summer. Again, there'll be more information if you have communities that you're thinking of or that you want us to connect with in advance, or to give you some ideas of the types of projects we work on with them. We are happy to work with you all on that. So I'll bring more details and a reminder before the application opens in March. We also have our My Daily Travel survey continuing. So in the coming months, our next batch of survey invites will go out to select addresses across the region. To date, we've got about 2,000 people who've participated in the My Daily Travel survey. The survey is a little bit more than just sort of answering what you think about travel or infrastructure. It really is trying to get to the details of how people are moving in their daily lives, because that helps us calibrate our transportation models here at the agency. Our goal is to get 4,000 responses. So, should you be selected, there's a letter from us that has a detail about it. And also just if, you get constituents that reach out to you and say, is this real? It is real. It's super valuable to us. And we're thankful for those who've already participated. Clean and reliable and affordable water for Northeastern Illinois' health and prosperity is also a critically important goal of our On to 2050 plan. So we are hoping that we can continue to preserve and sustain our water supply resources into the future. We have 2 new reports available to help decision makers take action to be able to do these things. So CMAP, the Illinois Indiana Sea Grant, and the University of Illinois Extension Program updated the region's water demand forecast, which estimates future water demand to 2050 at the municipal, county, and regional level. It also shows demand by user, water source, and sector for the 7-county region. So again, it shows right now that water use is expected to continue declining due to the advances in water conservation and efficiency, which are outpacing population and employment growth. However, in some areas, we have forecasted that water demand will exceed the available water, groundwater supplies. So this report continues to dig into this issue, again, hopefully provide some valuable input and information for your local water users. Our other report digs into water sustainability. We worked with an organization called Freshwater, which is a Minnesota-based nonprofit dedicated to water sustainability. Again, this one's looking at high capacity well review and draws insights from groundwater governance practices in neighboring states. So if you're interested in more geeking out about water issues, please don't hesitate to reach out to us and I'll put you in touch with Nora and Kate, who worked on both of these reports here. And 2 other quick things on the legislative front. Our top priority is securing a dedicated source of state funding on an annual basis for CMAP's technical assistance offerings and non-transportation related work. During the 2024 call for projects, we received 120 applications from communities across the region for support. You know, many communities ask for our support, but the funds that we have available are not sufficient to be able to meet the demand. In addition, you know, there are a number of communities that would like our assistance in zoning, in housing, in water areas, places where our transportation funding just doesn't fully cover the cost of that work. So we're trying to make clear in our messaging that we're committed to strengthening communities by staying adaptable and responsive to local needs. This reliable funding would really help us support all of the communities that you represent across the region. So we're working with Representative Davis, who represents many of our low capacity and low income communities in the south suburbs as our lead sponsor. Representative Davis recently filed House Bill 3784. You have a 1-pager back in front of you here that details that. We're so thankful for his support. And our ask is for $2 million for CMAP to fulfill its obligations under the State Regional Planning Act here. Again, enhancing our capacity to support local communities and counties across Northeastern Illinois. So our intergovernmental affairs team is developing an outreach and engagement plan right now. We are happy to go out, to sit down, to have you join us in these conversations with your state elected officials to really provide that insight, that local perspective as we have those conversations about the need for this work. And then finally, last week, Senator Billy Vollum and Representative Marcus Evans Jr. filed another bill addressing the future of transit in Northeastern Illinois in partnership with the Labor Alliance for Public Transit. So in addition to governance reforms and improvement to the transit system, the bill calls for the creation of a road user charge advisory committee to devise a structure for a pilot in Illinois that would look at what comes after the motor fuel taxes. The bill includes a seat for CMAP on this committee as well. We're continuing to review the bill for its alignment to the PART report and will provide feedback as requested. So that officially concludes my update. Sort of started on a somber note and moved into some of our more exciting activities here. Happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Any questions of Aaron? All right, if not, we'll move on with the agenda. Items 301, 401 are part of the consent agenda. One is the approval of the minutes. The second is an authorization for a contract for 2.963, 900,000. Any comments on that, Aaron, at all, or not? Just straightforward?
Straightforward. I'll just highlight one thing that we are doing is helping the state and all of our MPO partners have the same access to the ETIP tool that we use to program all of our transportation projects. So that's why that project is a little bit different than it is in past years.
Without objection, I'll entertain a motion to approve those consent. Moved and seconded. Any questions? If not, all in favor signify by a vote of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote of no. The motion carries.
Aye.
Moving on to the regular agenda, we have a presentation of our annual audit, who is
Yeah, Martha Trotter. So before I hand it over to Martha, who is online, thank you. I wanted to share just an update about our last audit and how we resolved it for FY 2024. So the FY 23 financial audit did include a deficiency in our internal controls over our preparation of the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, or CFA. In 2024, our finance team eliminated this deficiency by making improvements to our processes. The new finance team will continue to enhance our operations and utilize our enterprise resource system to improve internal controls. And so I just wanted to highlight for you, the finance team spent quite a bit of time this year making sure that they understood their responsibilities of pulling this together. And so I am excited to say that we no longer have this deficiency, but I'm sure Martha will speak to that in her report. Martha?
Thank you, Erin. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me on today. I am, as Erin noted, I am presenting to you the results of the fiscal year 2024 audit. That's for the period ended June 30th, 2024. Hopefully you've received electronic copies of the audit report and the board communication that have been issued as part of the annual audit for the agency. I do also have those here on the screen with me today. So I'll be going through the results of the audit and assist in your review and understanding of the financial statements and highlighting the results of the audit procedures. So first, I would like to present to you the independent auditor's report, which is found on beginning on page 1 of the annual financial report. And I am pleased to be able to present a clean, unmodified opinion on the agency's financial statements for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2024. That is in accordance with our audit testing that was done in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, as well as the additional compliance requirements based on the agency's level of grant activity that was conducted in accordance with generally accepted governmental auditing standards. So there is, as in previous years, the additional compliance testing requirements that led to what was presented in the prior year, what we noted as a significant deficiency. As Erin mentioned, that was eliminated. There were procedures taken by the agency to properly prepare the schedule of expenditures of federal awards and reconcile that to the agency's financial statements. And we appreciate the level of effort that was taken to take that deficiency that we noted last year and in a year implement procedures and processes over that to successfully eliminate that comment. So I am, in addition to the clean, unmodified opinion, I am pleased to be able to note that that deficiency was eliminated in the fiscal year 2024 audit. The basic financial statements of the agency can be found beginning on page 5 of the annual financial report, beginning with the statement of net position. This is presented comparatively, so you have both the 2024 audit results as well as the previous fiscal year's 2023 audit results. The statement of net position, you'll find the agency's net position for the fiscal year June 30th, 2024 ended at 11.6 million, which was a bit of an increase over the previous fiscal year's net position. In addition, there are categories presented here for different categorizations of the net position. So your net investment in capital assets is the agency's portion of net position that is associated with non-spendable resources, your long-term capital assets net of accumulated depreciation, as well as any portion of the net position associated with the agency's intangible assets associated with the lease. And this year there is a presentation for restricted net position related to the IMRF net pension assets. So for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2024, The agency did have a net pension asset associated with IMRF, and that portion of the net position is shown as restricted, as that is to be used for pension benefits. And finally, that remaining unrestricted net position of 8.8 million, a slight increase over the previous year, 6.2 million that was presented, that is associated with the net position available to fund subsequent fiscal years. On page 6, you'll find the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. And I just want to highlight here the agency's operating income of 3.9 million, that increase over the previous fiscal year that led to the increase in net position. And that was largely due to the increased level of contribution revenue that was reported in fiscal year 2024. There was a slight decrease in personnel service costs, but in large part, the increase ties directly to the contribution revenue that was reported for the fiscal year. So as you see here, the change in that overall change in that position of 3.6 million over the previous fiscal year, a healthy fiscal year. There is a section of the financial statements that begins with the management discussion and analysis that comes right before the basic financial statements. And I do want to also just comment on that section. If there's no other portion of the financial statements that you read, I do encourage reviewing the management discussion and analysis, as it provides a great deal of context to the balances that are presented in the basic financial statements and summarizes the report very efficiently and provides for a bit more information as to the causes of the variances and comparisons to budget and comparisons to prior year that are not available directly in the basic financial statements themselves. There were no changes to GASB or GASB implementations required for the agency's financial statement reporting for this fiscal year, so there's no changes to the footnote disclosures that you'll see consistent with the previous fiscal year's reporting. And the information related to the single audit that begins on page 50 of the annual financial report. And that is where you'll find the opinions regarding the single audit as required with uniform grant guidance and the testing that was completed specific to the major programs of the agency for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2024. Just once again, I wanted to highlight here what we found is, as in prior years, there were no instances of non-compliance noted. However, as it relates to the internal controls, we did note the significant deficiency in the previous year that I just want to highlight once again. We understand the level of effort to understand what the deficiency resulted from and to make those changes that were necessary, especially with all the transition in the agency's finance team. We do appreciate all of the work that was done to successfully eliminate and prepare a schedule of expenditures of federal awards that we did not have any significant adjustments to. So we just want to acknowledge from our team the appreciation and the understanding of how much work went into improving on that comment from the previous fiscal year. So overall, a great improvement. And you'll note the same in the board communication that was issued. We had on page 11 in the appendix, we noted the comment as being considered implemented for the fiscal year. So it does pop up in a few places, but it's a very significant undertaking that the plan was put in place and the changes were made and effectively cleared the comment. Any questions in regards to either the annual financial report or the board communication? I'm just realizing I'm not hearing anyone. Is anyone able to hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. I'm not hearing anything from the boardroom.
I think that we might have got cut off in the boardroom, but your presentation was excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it seems like there's audio issues once again.
How about now? Folks online hear us now?
My
Yes.
audio's back.
Great. Martha, we could hear your entire presentation. There were no questions from the room.
Okay. Just wanted to be sure I stayed on in case there was anything else.
Thank you very much. I do believe we need a,
Are you done? I'm sorry.
yep.
Yeah.
We do.
I didn't know whether she was done. Are you done?
Yeah, Martha, your presentation is concluded, correct?
Yes, I've presented what I needed to. If there's any questions, that's I'd be happy to entertain those.
Great. With that in mind, I'll entertain.
Motion to accept the audit.
Moved and seconded to accept the audit. I will read the roll, or go ahead and read the roll on that one.
Sure, sounds good. Mayor Bennett?
Yes.
Frank Beal? Mayor Brawley? Mayor Curry?
Yes.
Mayor Grasso? Mayor Hofert?
Yes.
Nina Itamudia?
Yes.
Mayor Noak?
Yes.
President Reinbold? John Robertson? Mayor Rodering?
Yes.
Joanna Ruiz?
Yes.
Carolyn Schofield?
Yes.
Ann Sheehan?
Yes.
Matt Walsh?
Yes. Again, Martha, motion carries. Martha, thank you. And I would especially thank staff for all the work that goes into this audit. It is not necessarily a complicated financial audit because of all the different funding sources. But obviously, if you go through this audit, there's a lot of funds that have to be down to the penny as far as accountability. And staff does a great job. And I thank you.
Yeah. I'll thank Voss, who you'll see in just a moment here for that. So thank you.
All right, moving on. Under the CMAP budget and work plan.
Great. I'm going to give a little bit of intro and then I'll let Voss talk about the financials of the budget here. So our FY 2026 annual budget and work plan is truly informed by the region's long-range plan on to 2050, which reflects the collective vision of our communities, of the people in Northeastern Illinois, and really our leaders who work together to, we're waiting on the slides. That's okay. Who work together to help identify these priorities. And it's a big process and it's a fun process in many ways. And I think, again, by continuing to put forth a vision for our region that helps us be successful economically and improve quality of life is critically important to our role. So as in previous years, we are assuming a stable distribution of federal funds, which we primarily rely upon. You want me to keep going? You want me to hold on for a second? Okay. All right. Which we primarily rely upon. Again, should there be a change or disruption in funding impacting our budget, we would bring forward a modified budget to the board for action. But at this point in time, we're expecting that this number will hold. So just as a reminder here, we do wear two hats as an agency. We are the federally designated metropolitan planning organization, but we are also the state's regional planning agency. And we serve the region in just a number of different ways with both of those hats on, but oftentimes we sort of weave them together here for our conversation. But our roles are outlined in both state and federal law. So the MPO requirements really are in the Highway Act of 1962, which requires MPOs for all urban areas that have populations over 50,000 people to provide a continuing, cooperative, comprehensive, otherwise known as a 3C approach to the transportation planning process in order to qualify to have those federal funds and be able to spend them across our region. So again, those requirements really are that we allocate federal transportation dollars through that collaborative process, that we're developing the long-range transportation plan every 8 years, that we're producing and managing the transportation improvement program here, the TIP, and the Unified Planning Work Program, the UWP program. It also requires us to maintain travel data and really use that to support regional transportation projects and the implementers as they develop their projects and programs as that baseline for consistency across the region. It also requires us to look at air quality conformity and make sure that we are abiding by rules and regulations that exist in the transportation and other titles. And so we conduct financial planning. That plan must be fiscally constrained. So that's part of the reason why at a previous board meeting, you saw us looking at sort of the amount of money that's projected for us to have in the region across a 25 to 30-year time frame here. And really, we're also required to have an inclusive public engagement process for this plan. So again, we derive most of our budget and our funding from the federal government for the associated projects that come with this federal designation here. And so those funds can really only be used for eligible sources that are driven in that transportation title. As the state authorized regional planning agency, we are required to plan for coordinated and regionally integrated transportation system that we are thinking about a comprehensive regional plan that goes beyond transportation planning, but really considers the impact of transportation on land use, on the environment, on the way that our businesses want to co-locate and our communities develop here, and that we're informing and shaping those policies proactively through the data that we have and the modeling tools that we have. We're also required to produce official forecasts for growth for the region. The Act also talks about us developing capacity building tools, technical assistance tools, and that we're thinking about fostering meaningful, equitable engagement across the region. But again, as I mentioned at the beginning of our meeting, we're really limited by the current funding structure that we have and that lack of state appropriation for us to be able to fully achieve the requirements of the Regional Planning Act here. So that's why that push for that $2 million is just so important. In comparison to our entire budget, it's not that much, but we are able to do so much more on all of those other topics with just a little bit of help from the state here. So how we're funded here, again, federal funds known as those metropolitan planning funds or those PL funds, again, things that I was reminded by earlier this week that don't come to Congress and talk to them about PL funds, tell them about what you do because we use so many acronyms here across the region, but they come to the state, they're allocated to the 16 MPOs across the region. CMAP is the largest MPO because we are the biggest metropolitan region in the state here. And so that federal funding does require the 20% local match. We meet that through the local contributions that we receive from municipalities, counties, and implementers across the region. And so at this point, I think I am going to turn it over to Vas Bakovsky, who's going to talk about the budget numbers associated with these. You'll see one of the notable differences of
Hi, for online participants, this is Caitlin Cernak with CMAP. Just wanted to let you know that the in-person team is aware of the audio issues and they're resolving it. So stand by, thank you.
looks like no. Oh, maybe though, our green box is on. Okay, see, Mayor Grasso gave me a thumbs up.
Greener.
Great. I think the last thing I was mentioning that's unique in this budget is the Corridor Development Office partnership between CTA, IDOT, and CMAP to provide strategic support towards visioning and sequencing of projects, developing funding plans, and supporting coordination with our federal partners for the 290 Blue Line corridor. So with that, if we're all still online, I'm going to turn it over to Vas, who will speak to you about the budget details.
Morning, everyone. Vas Bakovsky, Deputy of Finance. CMAP's FY 2024 budgeted revenue had surpassed $40 million for the first time. Our total FY 2026 budgeted revenue of $43.5 million is just slightly lower compared to the prior year. Yeah, thank you. As our Executive Director had mentioned, the federal funding from the U.S. Department of Transportation supports Unified Work Program. This funding represents 74% of CMAP's total revenue. Per Federal Highway Administration guidance, we continue to work on identifying sustainable revenue sources to match federal planning funds. These funds are also used to match other grants and day-to-day expenses, general operational needs, and other routine CMAP functions. In FY 2026, CMAP has identified an additional $225,000 dedicated to growing our fund balance reserve. These funds will enable the agency to continue seeking and securing requiring a local match commitment and further diversify our funding sources. Next slide, please. UWP funding represents 64% of CMAP annual budget. UWP funds are utilized for operational activities and contractual services that meet federal metropolitan planning requirements. There are no considerable changes compared to the prior year, with a few exceptions. First, over $3 million has been allocated to the Corridor Development Office for I-290 Blue Line project and ET data services. Secondly, the last year's budget included $1 million for Ecopia program. This program will not extend beyond FY 2025. Ecopia is a geospatial services and data from U.S. Department of Commerce. Additionally, we anticipate less work on safety for all streets and American with Disability programs comparing to prior year. Let's take a look at CMAP's other funding sources. As we mentioned, we are very restricted on how we can use UWP funds. Therefore, it's a priority of ours to identify and diversify our funding streams. We regularly apply for competitive grants and support complementary work. CMAP is a unit of local government under the Illinois law, but the big differentiator between us and other local governments is that we do not have an ability to generate revenue from taxes or services to diversify our funding programs. Some examples of funding sources include the funds from the MacArthur Foundation for the continued support of our work to build local government capacity through planning and implementation assistance. Since 2008, CMAP has received nearly $2 million in grant funding from MacArthur Foundation. We also received funds from the Illinois Department of Resources and Illinois Environmental Protection Agency for water supply and water quality management work. We have received funds from U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and U.S. Department of Energy for climate action programs. This work is temporarily paused as we try to get guidance from these federal agencies under the new administration. We also use funds from the Build America Bureau to support technical resources, planning and project development to expedite regional transportation infrastructure through innovative financing and delivery methods, including public-private partnerships. Let's review FY 2026 expenses now. For FY 2026, CMAP's expenses are projected to be $42.9 million, which is a 2% decrease compared to FY 2025. And this is in line with the reduction to the revenue budget. Personnel and fringe benefits, consultants, and contractual services comprise over 70% of total FY 2026 expenditures. Personnel and fringe benefits costs comprise 36% of our operating budget. CMAP anticipates an increase in headcount by 2 staff members by the end of FY 2026, and total expenses for full-time salaries, temporarily staff wages, and corresponding fringe benefits will increase nearly 5%. Consultants and professional services costs comprise 26% of our FY 2026 budget. The anticipated $2.8 million decrease is due to the certain grants ending. We will discuss contractual subawards in detail shortly, which is a large portion of our budget. Miscellaneous costs and other costs primarily consist of software subscriptions, employee training, and regional travel. Next slide. The total allocation of FY 2026 UWP subawards to external agencies is $6.7 million, which includes both core and competitive. For core, eligible planning partners submit budget proposals for ongoing core activities only. This cycle, we received budget requests from 16 agencies, including CDOT, CTA, METRA, PACE, and McHenry County Department of Transportation. It also includes 11 councils of mayors. The competitive program is the 5-year biannual program for one-time projects that are scored competitively using criteria established in UWP methodology developed in 2023. The first 5-year program was established last year, and the project will be implemented in the fiscal years 25 through 29. At this time, unless there are questions, our executive director will go over our work plan highlights.
Questions?
Okay, then I'll just cover a few of the work plan highlights.
Thank you, everyone. We are looking into it.
Oh, this is just catching up to us. How about now? Mayor Grasso, thumbs up? Yes, thank you. A couple work plan highlights here then. Again, a lot of our work is continuing in the FY 2026 work program. Again, key activities I've mentioned and you've heard before, they've come before you. Again, the regional transportation plan, it's a required process every 4 years. You'll see this come to completion in October of 2026. So there will be continued activities throughout this year. One of the other things that we want to prioritize this next year is really focusing on our data leadership, making sure that we are continuing to solidify our role as the region's trusted, credible, and authoritative source of data for the region to support data-driven discourse and policymaking. So in FY 26, we are making strategic focus on advancing the agency's analytical capabilities by identifying and creating innovative tools, testing new methods for data analysis and visualization, as well as beginning to continuing to foster cross-divisional relationships around data, understanding, really making sure our data catalog is clear and accessible to our teams here. And then transportation safety, we really have been excited about the work that we've been doing under the Safe Streets for All work, but really to begin to complement this work, really thinking about how we can bring data analysis to tell more compelling stories about the need for continued safe streets, safety for bicycle and pedestrians across our region as well. So I think those are just the 3 things I wanted to touch on from the work plan highlights. Is there another slide? Nope. If not, happy to answer questions about both the financials
questions
or
on the budget?
projects.
Go ahead, Mayor.
I just wanted to thank you for a really clear presentation. There is so much here, and every time you guys put it together in a way that's super easy to understand and to follow, and I just want to share my appreciation to you and the staff.
I mean, say that that is a huge reflection on the team that I have behind me. So thank you all.
Right. As far as an illustration to explain to other people, it's right out in front of you from colors to ABC. Great job. If there's no further questions, ladies and gentlemen, I'll entertain a motion to accept the fiscal budget.
So moved. No.
Moved and seconded. I will read the roll call again on this. Aaron? Aye.
Frank Beal, President Brawley, Mayor Curry, Mayor Grasso, Mayor Hofert,
Aye.
Nina Idamudia,
Aye.
Mayor Noak,
Aye.
President Reinbold, John Robertson, Mayor Rotering,
Yes.
Joanna Ruiz,
Aye.
Carolyn Schofield,
Yes.
Ann Sheehan, Matt Walsh.
Yes. The motion carries again. Thank you all for.
Thank you.
Moving on to our last item on the federal performance targets. Martin, there he is.
Morning, everyone. I'm Martin Menninger. Today, Victoria Barrett and I are going to present on our highway asset condition and roadway safety targets. But first, I'm going to go through a little bit why we set targets. Next slide. So started in the 2012 Federal Transportation Bill, Congress restructured funding from several separate funds to focused on bridges, interstates, the NHS into one large fund called the National Highway Performance Program. The NHPP is the largest source of federal funding to IDOT, and federal funding makes up over half of IDOT's funding. So this is a big, important fund for us. States were allowed flexibility in how they use NHPP funding across asset types, as long as progress was made towards federal goals. Failing to meet federal goals results in restrictions in funding flexibility. With this additional flexibility in funding, Congress and USDOT set up a number of requirements that ensure outcomes aligned with their federal goals. They set up a process called, next slide, the Transportation Performance Management Process that ensures that this funding aligns with their goals. Each step in the process leads directly into the next step. I'm going to walk you through that framework and the role of the MPO in each step. The first step is to identify strategic goals. This happens in several places. For example, next slide. For example, CMAP, IDOT, and the RTA all develop long-range plans. These are the 7 goals that Congress gives us. They look at things like reducing congestion and improving the freight network, but these are high-level goals. Next slide. USDOT took those goals and turned them into specific performance measures that we set targets for. I'm going to focus on federal goals. Talk all day about targets.
I know. How about now?
Any better?
Good. Thank you, Mayor Grasso.
All right, we're good again. So USDOT gave us these areas where we're supposed to set targets. The next step, we develop plans for how we're going to achieve each of those targets. Next slide. So these are some of the plans that are written. IDOT writes plans for roadway safety and roadway condition. Transit agencies do the same for condition and safety. And at CMAP, we develop a congestion management plan that you may have heard of. We're currently in the process of updating it. As part of these plans, there's extensive data collection, and then strategies and projects are identified that help us move towards those targets we set in the previous step. Next slide. So programming is the next step. Programming is matching funding to projects that will be constructed. Performance-based programming uses the data, strategies, and projects developed in plans to inform project selection. For example, this is a table out of PACE's asset management plan of all of their capital projects or their short-term capital projects and the score that is given to them based on the data and strategies they developed. Next slide. So great, we've developed plans and strategies. We're working towards those goals, but Congress keeps track of how we're doing on these. Each year we get new data and we monitor how the system is performing, and we're given opportunities to adjust our targets to reflect new plans and new information. IDOT adjusted their targets with their midpoint performance report in the fall. That triggers MPOs to adjust our targets, which is what we're doing today. We'll be updating all of our targets across all 5 categories with our regional transportation plan in October 2026. Next slide. So like I said, there are a bunch of requirements. MPOs, states, and transit agencies have to develop a number of different reports to let the federal government how we're progressing towards our targets. But more importantly, since we support their goals of making the system better, we analyze the data and trends to understand if our plans are working as expected and make adjustments to our strategies and programs as needed. This image here is a dashboard that CMAP recently launched to communicate our progress on federal targets to a wider audience. It includes maps and trends on each of our federal performance targets. There's a link on the slide and also in the memo for this meeting. Next slide. So as you can see, targets are part of a larger transportation performance management process that sets the direction for subsequent planning and programming decision-making. With that in mind, let's talk about a few targets. First, we're going to talk about highway asset condition, which is measured using data on bridges and pavement condition. Pavement can be in good, fair, or poor condition. We set targets for percent in good and percent in poor on the interstate system and the non-interstate NHS, which is primarily our arterial network. I adjusted their interstate percent good target to align with some expected investments that they were planning to make, and they adjusted their percent poor interstate target to align with recent trends in the data. No changes were made to their non-interstate targets. IDOT maintains the majority of the NHS, and we have supported IDOT's pavement targets in the past and recommend continuing to support IDOT's pavement targets. Next, we'll talk about bridges. A large share of our bridges were constructed following World War II. These bridges are now 60 to 75 years old. And while there's no standard useful life for bridges, bridges of this age require additional maintenance, and many are ready for replacement or will be soon. With that context, next slide. Considering the age profile of our bridges, our target for bridge condition is just to maintain existing condition. New tools, data, and strategies from IDOT that focus on preventative maintenance treatments have made, are making the funding we have available go as far as it can, but we continue to face this huge backlog in aging bridges. Staff recommends keeping our bridge target unchanged. Next, Vicki is going to present on our safety targets.
Good morning. Yes, as Martin just shared, CMAP's responsible for a number of federal performance measures, and this is the time of year when we come to board and MPO committee for approval of our annual safety targets, which are required within the Federal Highway Safety Improvement Program, which is often called, referred to as HSIP. Today's targets represent the hopeful goals for roadway safety in 2025. As you know, traffic safety issues are complex and often require long timelines to realize change. CMAP safety program, known as the Safe Travel for All Roadmap, is urgently and comprehensively directed toward reducing fatalities and serious injuries on our roadways. With that, I'm pleased to report that as of this morning, the fatality count in Illinois is 44 fatalities fewer than it was on this date last year, which is still too many for what we're looking at, but some progress. There are 5 federal performance measure safety targets. They are shown here in the chart. The targets are called fatalities, which is the raw number of fatalities, serious injuries, which is the raw number of serious injuries, and then both of those are turned into a rate to better understand the relationship between fatalities and serious injuries and the amount of travel in the region. So the third and fourth targets are fatality rate per 100 million vehicle miles of travel and the serious injury rate per 100 million miles of vehicle travel. And then finally, there is one target at the bottom of this chart, which is the combined non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, which, just as it says, combines the fatalities and serious injuries of both bicyclists and pedestrians. These are all statewide numbers. Today, we are presenting the targets that were identified by IDOT, and I'll share with you the exact targets on the following slides. So this is a graph of statewide traffic fatalities from 2018 to 2023, the last year for which data was available. The gray line indicates a 5-year rolling average, which is a tool used to understand longer-term trends. And as you can see here, the trend in fatalities still trends upward as of 2023. The yellow dots are past year's targets, which you can see were not met. Thankfully, traffic fatalities have declined since a spike in 2021 associated with the COVID-19 pandemic, but you'll see they still remain higher than pre-pandemic levels. The hope is that the downward trend will be visible in the next year's target setting process, which will support more aggressive targets in the future. The target for fatalities in 2025, represented by the red circle, is a 2% reduction from the previous year's target, and it is 1,099.5. Similarly, the rate of fatalities per vehicle mile traveled trended upward in the base years to set this target, a 2% reduction was used to show the intention to reverse that trend, resulting in a target of 1.083 per 100 million miles of vehicle travel. The next targets are the serious injury targets. Serious injuries, in contrast to fatalities, have been decreasing since 2018. While any decline in serious traffic crashes is a good thing, this must be taken into context with the increasing number of fatalities. That said, because this trend is going in the desired downward direction, a trend line method was used to identify the 2025 target of 7,816.8 serious injuries. And similar to serious injuries, its rate has also been in decline. So again, a trend line method was used to identify this target of 8.046 serious injuries per 100 million miles of vehicle travel. And finally, the non-motorized fatal and serious injuries are shown here, which combine both bicyclists and pedestrians. As I mentioned, this target was created using a composite method to reflect the two different trends within those categories. Non-motorized fatalities, which increased, was created using a 2% reduction. Non-motorized is trending downward and was determined using a trend line method. And then these were added together to create the 2025 target of 1,332.4. So our recommendation is to support these targets, which are relatively aggressive for 2025. And as always, we continue to work towards our agency goal of 0 traffic fatalities by 2050, as identified in our 2050 plan. And finally, I just want to mention that our goal in the coming years is to align the traffic safety work that we're doing here at CMAP with the safety target setting process. As we've talked about, our Safe Travel for All roadmap has a comprehensive regional safety action planning effort. Our hope is that we can align the goals and the actions with the plans in the future with our expected targets to create a very regionally focused target, which is an option available to us within the Highway Safety Improvement Program. And with that, I'll turn it back to Chair.
Any questions? Thank you. Go ahead, Aaron. Oh, Mayor, go ahead.
So when you set these targets,
Would you pull the mic a little bit closer?
so when you set these targets, I mean, what are you basing that on?
So there are two different methods, which are looking at the past. And the current policy at IDOT is to, when the trend is going upwards, to insert a 2% policy-based reduction, which means the hope is that the construction projects that are being implemented in the next year, the safety improvement program will actually result in a 2% reduction in those fatalities.
Sometimes those construction projects cause the fatalities, right? If you've ever been around the south end of the lake, when they've been doing construction with all the trucks and everything, I mean, it's crazy. That's great to say, well, we want it 2% down, but what are they really doing other than repairing the roads, which they do generally anyways? I don't know if I put a lot of, support in these targets.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about construction projects, I think a lot of those,
That was just an
if
example.
they're intersection improvements, meaning, there's better access to pedestrian and or bike ways through those intersections. So yes, unfortunately, whatever takes place during construction is probably another research to take a look at. But the point is, after the improvement, the hope is to reduce it.
No, I mean, we do lots of improvements in our town and we have to get an IDOT, well, either work with IDOT or get their approval. Half the time we can't get their attention. But these targets just seem kind of fluffy to me. It's like, well, if it's going up, we're gonna, and if it's going down, we're gonna, I don't know. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of credibility in it.
And I think that's one of the reasons why we are actively exploring whether or not we set our own regional targets. We've had numbers of conversations with our federal partners about what, there are 2 required setting processes, right? The state must do theirs, 180 days later, we must do ours. One of the reasons why Vicky is in the role that she is in is because Federal Highways said, like, we want you to have a more, and the region, actually, the counties and cities came together and said, we want you to be more actively participating and helping us address traffic fatalities. And so as we've built this program and sort of started to grow our expertise and gather data, we do feel like we're maybe at a mature enough point in the next year or 2 to be able to start doing some target setting on our own, and therefore have that healthy debate about, like, is the 2% policy reduction where we want to be, or do we want to be
for years and years. And not IDOT, he was with the expressway, but I used to ask him, what is the one thing, that causes most accidents and fatalities? And he said, it's always speed. People are just going too fast. They lose control. They cause a major accident. People get killed. So.
Yeah. Let's pause just for one moment. I'm sorry terribly about the audio in the room, but they're resetting it one more time. Oh, here, Mayor Grasso, were you giving me a
Mayor,
thumbs
you
up?
got a thumbs
Yeah,
up?
okay, so we're good. Okay, Carolyn.
Mayor, we thank you for your thumbs up all meeting.
Yes, I know. You're going to get the thumbs up award.
My question is regarding the standard by which the good, fair, and poor roads that were mentioned. Who sets that standard? And then does that standard change over time? Because I'm just curious if it changes.
So the good, fair, poor is for the pavement and the bridges. There's federal standards. So they go out with lasers and scan the roads. And there's a standard across the whole country that everybody follows and reports that data back to the federal government. There's a national bridge inventory that goes back decades where bridges have been using the same methodology for
In the
years.
last transportation bill, not this one, but the one prior, there was a requirement that every state develop an asset management plan. And then that set goals for saying that you had good, fair, and poor. And it sort of looked at like the condition of each roads, and the states are supposed to be investing dollars to get the majority of their roads to fair and good.
And the standard has stayed the same. There's no like altering. And I just think sometimes with that
So-
good, then if the standard changes, then it skews your whole percentages. So I'm
We
curious
did
about that.
have, IDOT had a methodology for ranking pavement, and this new federal requirement came on that slightly adjusted that standard, but the federal standard has not changed in 10 years or so.
Mayor?
I can answer that, actually. That's what I teach, actually. There is actually just measure, actually, that's defined by AASHTO, and it's called Pavement Serviceability Index, PSI. And that's varies from 0 to 5, basically. 0 means nothing, it's basically means dirt, and 5 is the best one. And usually when it falls below 3, it means that actually it's not serviceability is not high, so that they mark it actually just not appropriate.
So where does the bridge target come from? And I guess I'm going to give you my context for concern, and that is obviously the bridges are getting older, the bridges are continuing to degrade, and yet we're staying stable. How do we become aspirational? And I can't even believe I'm asking this given the situation financially, but as bridges continue to fail in this country, what is it going to take to start to prioritize repairing and replacing those bridges?
So in 2018, when we first set the bridge target, about 8% of bridges were in poor condition. We're a little bit higher today, but that's relatively recent history. And so at that time, we said, let's try to maintain at existing condition. What has sort of gives us hope is that IDOT has developed what they call an enterprise asset management system, and it takes the condition of all their assets, both pavement and bridges, and strategically plans out preventative maintenance and looks at the full life cycle cost of assets and strategically invests in our assets to extend their life. So that's how we're getting sort of more bang for our buck recently. But there is a major backlog in bridges that we're working with IDOT to do some financial planning for the next plan that we're going to be looking at pretty seriously.
Other questions? Thank you both. We appreciate, I'm sorry, Dr. Go ahead.
Quick question, when, for the action on the safety, when you guys having that target actually just for the fatal accidents, why constantly actually this is below what we see? So basically the graph you showed us in the past 5 years, constantly just the target is actually just less than what we observe. Why you're not trying actually just to be closer to actually what's the reality?
Yeah, well, I'd say one aspect of that story is definitely the COVID-19 pandemic, which really resulted in a huge spike in fatal crashes despite a reduction in the amount of travel done. It was the first time the number of fatalities and the amount of travel decoupled. They've trended together. So I think that threw everyone off, first of all. So the target setting methods had already been developed. And there is, we're pointing at some of the weak spots of safety target setting, which is it aligned with actual decisions and construction projects that will be created, or is it aligned with what our intentions and hopes are? So those are called aspirational target setting methods versus like practical and work aligned. And when there's a lot of people that don't believe in setting increasing targets, just as a kind of a philosophy. So, and that is, IDOT's intention and hope is that every year we will be able to bring a number that's trending upward down, which is why they have decided on a fairly aggressive 2% policy-based reduction in the trends that are increasing so that we don't, make it sound like increasing numbers of people dying on our roads is okay or expected.
Hope is not a strategy, right? So you can hope all you want. What are they actually doing to make the roadways safer? And I get where intersections and such, but if they're just doing what they've always done, then these numbers are not going to change, unfortunately.
Thank you, both. Further questions or comments? We will need a vote on sending this to the MPO Policy Committee as to the federal performance targets. I'll entertain a motion to
No moved.
Second.
moved and seconded. Any other questions or comments? Erin, you want to read the roll call, please?
I don't think we need a roll call unless anybody wants a roll call.
Yeah.
No.
If not, all those in favor signify by a vote of aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, vote of no. Motion carries. That's my favorite roll call. Moving on to any other business before the board, out of public comments. Anybody online?
We do have Garland.
Oh, Garland? Garland?
How you doing, Mayor Bennett?
I am good, Garland. How are you?
All right. Just want you to know 11 more days count down to my birthday and I'll be 59. And also too, just wanted to give kudos to y'all to make sure, especially for the municipalities to help out for individuals and seniors with disabilities to make sure that they, when especially the sidewalks, that they don't have to, like for example, when my wife and I was there in 2023, especially the sidewalk was slightly up, and also too she had a mobility thing, and I had to tell her shut it off. Then I had to put it into manual, turn her power wheelchair around, pull it back, turn it around again, and put it into power mode. I hope make sure the municipalities in your county's area, in the 6th region, make sure that the sidewalks that's slightly up needs to flatten it out, because that could be an incident waiting to happen, especially those with walkers, and then for those who have manual wheelchairs. So I just want to give y'all the heads up on that, because we don't know when an incident will happen like that down the road. So they don't have to either be in the streets or something like that, or being killed. So just want you to know about that. And also there's uncertainty for especially what's happening right now on the federal level. I hope y'all in your region making sure that seniors who are disabled and individuals with disabilities, making sure that they will not be able to have to go through all of this again, because they've been struggling for it, and we're trying to make sure that they be a part of society, not being disconnected. So I hope y'all work together, make sure the municipalities do the same thing too, because only time will tell, and God forbids that those residents in those different municipalities will not say the word lawsuit coming. Why y'all didn't do it like Garland Armstrong said? Because, like they said, so we won't have another war on it. So that's my suggestion of it. And if you have any questions or comments from any of the boards where they are at in different counties, I'll be glad to answer, or any suggestions from y'all.
Thanks, Garland. We appreciate it. And happy birthday, right? Coming
Yes,
up.
that's coming the 23rd this month.
Well, happy birthday and enjoy it.
Thanks.
Thanks, Garland. Ladies and gentlemen, if there's any other comments? I want to thank the board members for coming down today. Hopefully it's not a challenge going home. I said, I don't know if people heard me in the beginning. I got down here in a half hour. So John Noki, you could have had a great day coming down here, but it was an easy ride. With that in mind, we will meet again in March. And again, thanks for attending this morning. It was important because of the budget and the federal requirements to pass on to the MPO. So we will not have an executive committee. Okay, that's good news. So with that in mind, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved to
Second.
second, all in favor? Move in favor, all in second, signify by a vote of aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right.